All right, so you guys just finished completing the square. I know that one can be a little tough. It has a lot of different steps in it. So what we're learning now is the quadratic formula. Okay, so this is to make all of the other things, this is the simple way for it. It looks a little complicated, but if you ever get in a place where you can't factor or you're really not sure about the factoring, completing the square seems like it might be a little complicated, or you're not real sure about what that's going to look like, you can always use the quadratic formula. So this is something you're going to need to memorize, and it has all these different letters in it. And there is, in the back of your book, in the appendix of your book, it actually has the step throughs that goes to how they got this actual formula. But all you need to know is when we are working with a quadratic, right? So we are working with something that is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, right? This is the definition of our formula here. So anytime you have an x squared term, remember we have a quadratic equation, right? So if it has an x squared term, then there's going to be a regular term. There may or may not be an x, right? There may or may not be a c. When they are, and you set it to 0, we call the coefficient of the x squared a. We call the coefficient of the x b, and just your constant is going to be c. Okay, so they will always be in this order, A, B, and C. This is really important because it has to be labeled properly for you to use your formula properly. Okay, so as we move through, let's look at this one. 3x squared minus 3x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so here's the formula that we have. Here's our equation. Okay, we have it in the form of ax squared, bx, and c. Okay, remember, even though that these say positive, they say plus. If we have negatives, then those negatives have to go with the numbers. Okay, so if I were to look at this, I can't factor this. I don't really want to deal with completing the square because I've got a 3, and then I have to deal with the fractions. So it's just going to be a lot easier if we just use our quadratic formula, okay? So in this sentence, we need to identify each of our variables. So we have A, we have B, and we have C, right? A is going to be 3, B is -3, and C is -2. So it's really important that those negatives follow us and that we're able to use them appropriately in the formula. So now that I have A, B, and C, it's basically just a plug and play for us to get our answer. So we're going to start with -b. Let's look at this. Erase this here. Okay. So our formula states -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's start plugging in our numbers. We have -b, and b is a -3. So see how we had the negative? We still have to keep the negative for our number. Plus or minus the square root b, we've got b again, so we've got that -3 squared minus 4, a is a +3, and c is a -2. Okay, and it's all over 2 times a, which is 3. Okay, so let's start working this through. Negative of a negative is just going to be a +3. Plus or minus, -3 squared is 9. And I've got 4 times 3 is 12, times 2 is 24. And we have a negative and a negative, so that's all positive. Over 6. All right, that simplified pretty quick. So 3 plus or minus, what do we have here? 9 plus 24, so we've got 33 over 6. Okay, so if I'm going to look at my radical here, I've got the square root of 33. My factors of 33 are 3 and 11. I can't take anything out of that. So this is simply the answer. You will often see it written as 3 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 6, or it could be written as 3 plus, and it would have a comma, and then it would say 3 minus the square root of 33 over 6. So it can be written with them separated, with one being a plus, one being a minus, or it can be written with them together as a plus or minus. So we took our complicated equation, we put it in, and in 4 steps, we had an answer. So we can see that our quadratic formula can be really helpful. Let's do another one. And on your test, I will actually break it out on how I want you to solve. So you guys don't have to guess and check on what that is. You'll know which ones you'll need to solve on that, okay? So let's do this next one. If we have 2x squared plus 5x minus 1 equals 0, the first thing that we need to do is make sure that it's all on one side set equal to 0. Once it's set equal to 0, we're going to label right here, label our A, B, and our C. Okay, so our A is 2, right? Our B is 5, and our C is -1. Make sure and don't lose that negative in there. All right, so now we just plug and play. So we've got -5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times -1 all over 2 times 2 for A. Okay, so we have -5 plus or minus 25. 4 times 2 is 8, but I've got 2 negatives, so plus 8 over 4. -5 plus or minus square root of 33 over 4. And there's our answer. We can't simplify 33, and so we would just leave it like that. If there were a chance, let's look at this. Let's make up one. Let's make up an answer. If we had 6 plus or minus the square root of 20 over 4. Okay, say this is what we ended up with. We would need to go ahead and simplify this as much as possible. Remember, our goal is to always have our answer simplified. How would we simplify? The first thing we want to do is deal with the radical. We know that 20 is really 4 times 5. 4 is a perfect square, so I can take its root out. So I'd have 6 plus or minus 2 square roots of 5 over 4. Okay? So now I'm looking just like whenever we had maybe 6 plus 2x. Remember, we can just look at our radical as a variable there, and I could take a 2 out. That would give me 3 plus x, correct? If I'm taking a 2 out of each section, we can do the same thing with the radical. So I would take a 2 out, and I would have 2 times 3 plus or minus square root of 5 all over 4. And then now that 2 can simplify with the 4. And my answer would be 3 plus or minus square root of 5 over 2. So if you end up with an answer where you can simplify the radical and then you can go ahead and simplify some of the factors in it, please do so. If not, like this one over here, and it's just left, then we just leave it like that. So that is how you use the quadratic formula. Pretty simple. you just need to always make sure that your equation is written in the term of x squared plus something plus c. Now, if you are missing something here, then you know that would be a 0, and you would fill that in for a 0 in place, okay? So that is it. And you guys will have a, let's see, I've got some dominoes that we're gonna work on at the end of class to practice using the quadratic formula. But right now we're going to move on to radical equations, and I'm gonna do a quick review and tell you about that.